I'm Lembit Öpik, the chair of the Parliament of Asgardia, and I've been considering the implications of the lockdown which has been caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. There are some upsides to that. First of all, the fact that I'm in one place all the time means I've been able to do some research which I haven't been able to do before into certain aspects of Asgardia's activities, particularly how to get the economy going. That's really important work. Secondly, because Asgardia is already a digital nation, I think we've been less badly affected politically than many terrestrial nations have been. They're getting used to having some form of digital democracy, but they're 2 years behind Asgardia. And in that sense, I'm impressed with the effect it hasn't had on the way we've been working together. Essentially, for Asgardian politicians, this has been business as usual. It's true that I've not been able to have some physical meetings with various individuals in administration and elsewhere, and those meetings are important. There is some amount of physical contact you do have to make sure occurs in a role like mine, but we'll work through that. We'll catch up whenever the lockdown is lifted. So it hasn't been disastrous, it's just been a little bit inconvenient. And the other big positive, I think, is that we have learned something about the ability of the human race to adapt, and I'll come back to that in a minute. What have been the problems? Well, as I've mentioned, I haven't been able to have some of the physical meetings which I've needed to have, so they'll happen later on in the year. Also, we've had to postpone some events, mainly till next year, because we simply weren't able to get people together due to the global nature of the pandemic and the global nature of the lockdown. That has been, once again, an inconvenience, but it's not the end of the world. We will get those events to happen eventually. And I think the third difficulty has been the distraction of it. COVID-19 has been the main news, certainly in most of the international media outlets. So it's been more difficult to get other messages across. But actually, there's a plus in that too. We've had to learn how to adapt our messages to make it clear there are other ways of living that don't require the kind of mass interaction on a physical basis, which has transported this disease all over the world. So what can we learn from all this? I think we've proved that life in lockdown has some similarity to life in space. If you're in a sealed spaceship, then you're also going to be in a kind of lockdown. That requires certain psychological patience and a mindset which accepts the limitations of the space you can live in. I think we've proved, in terms of that human adaptability, which I've already mentioned, we can do that. And I've been thinking about my own experience of that. I'm lucky I have a garden, and I recognize that probably in the lockdown life of space, you do need to have these kinds of open spaces in some form or other for the human mind to relax and just for the settling effect that nature can bring. The other thing I think that we can learn from this is that the human race is very vulnerable to attack here on Earth. This is a natural attack in the sense that wherever it came from, the virus is affecting our being, and it's killed a lot of people. There will come a time when a threat so great faces Earth that it really is travel or die. We know that the late Professor Stephen Hawking had that view, and many others share it too. We should see this as a wake-up call to make sure that with some even greater threat, some even greater problem, possibly from space itself, like a near-Earth object, everything that nature has created, including us, doesn't end in one's terrible, dramatic flash of light and the shock waves and everything that comes after that. The lesson, therefore, is human beings are adaptable. We deal with difficulties like COVID-19, but unless we plan for the future, there may not be one. And for that reason, we should regard the COVID-19 outbreak and everything that it's done as further evidence that Asgardia is on the right track to try to preserve our being and also nature generally so that when we do leave the Earth, it's an insurance policy that perhaps the most precious thing in the universe, which is life and perhaps sentience, consciousness, is not wiped out because we simply didn't prepare for the future. I hope that the COVID-19 outbreak has been something that you've been able to cope with. I hope that you haven't lost friends or loved ones through it, though I imagine that some of you have. We will get through this, and we must apply what we've learned so that Asgardia can play its part as part of that insurance policy for not just the decades, but the millennia ahead.